If you were here on Ash Wednesday, you heard a great sermon. Mother Elizabeth reminded us of the question from one of her favorite writers. Do you know what the Holy One can do with dust? And part of her point was, after the last 2 years, do we really need another reminder of our mortality? With nearly 1 million lives lost to this virus in this country alone, and so many other losses, loss of community, loss of holidays with loved ones, loss of sacred gathering, so many losses. It would seem that our mortality, the reminder that we are but dust, seems so very present. Do we really need to be reminded again? In Lent, here at Good Sam, we usually change to Eucharistic Prayer C. And as we prayed that prayer on Ash Wednesday, I was struck by the words. At your command, all things came to be. The vast expanse of interstellar space, galaxies, suns, the planets in their courses, and this fragile earth, our island home. Do you know what the Holy One can do with dust? From the primal elements you brought forth the human race and blessed us with memory, reason, and skill. Do you know what the Holy One can do with dust? There was a new couple here who shared that they are expecting. Do you know what the Holy One can do with dust? So I suppose it is in that sort of mindset that I tried to wander with Jesus into the wilderness. Our gospel on the first Sunday in Lent is always Jesus in the wilderness. Jesus, 40 days in the wilderness, corresponds to our 40 days of Lent. And we mark that wilderness by doing something different on the first Sunday in Lent, the Great Litany, which for some of you feels like an entire Lent worth of penance all by itself. But on the heels of Elizabeth's sermon, I'm thinking, haven't we been in the wilderness these last 2 years? Do we really need a Lenten wilderness just now? A time of fasting and self-denial? And please, no temptations. Not right now. What do we need to pay attention to this Lent? So many things have changed the last 2 years. Perhaps there's some bad habits you picked up that you need to let go of. I know that early on, you remember when we thought this was going to be 2 months? I started out thinking of this as kind of a vacation, right? Eating and drinking more than I would in normal times. After all, what else was there to do? So maybe you can work on dropping any bad habits that you picked up. But more importantly, what can you do to get closer to God? What can you do to be more available to God, to be more available to God's drawing you closer? What is it that God wants for you and from you in this place and this time? Richard Rohr tells us, God makes your very soul, the very essence of who you are as a person, created by God in the image and likeness of God, to be in a relational mystery with God. That in your very soul, the mystery of who you are and the mystery of who God is are already intertwined in your soul. God is already in here. The challenge, which Elizabeth described as kicking up some dust, I love that too. The challenge is to grow and deepen that relationship to God and that mystery with God, with whom you are already one. Brother Curtis Almquist from SSJE said it this way: for Jesus, those 40 days were a time to align himself with why God had given him life, to claim the right purpose, the right power, the right voice God had given him. He was in the desert to be purged of anything in the world that tempted him to stray from his reason for being. Perhaps that can be your Lenten journey this year. Maybe not so much a time of fasting, withholding the things that delight us, the self-denial. Seems like we've had more than enough of our share of that. How about a deep looking inward? A time to set aside to connect with God in a new way. Now, this might mean less TV time. This might mean setting aside those things or activities that allow us to numb out. Why has God put you here? What is your purpose? What is your voice? Is there anything keeping you from asking those questions? The answers? Well, there's not one answer to those questions. Even for the same individual, I'm convinced. I believe that we get different answers at different times or places in our lives. We may have many of the same God-given gifts and talents at 17 that we have at 71. But God is very likely calling us to a different purpose and wanting us to use our gifts and talents differently in those two stages of our lives. What is your purpose? To what is God calling you to give voice? To what wilderness is God calling you? Maybe not so much that you can suffer through with only the bare minimums of life, but so that you can see the beauty and inspiration in a way your tame world isn't showing you? I'm blessed that I get to hike almost every week. In the wilderness, you're actually in the dust rather than it being something that you're trying to get rid of. In the wilderness, maybe you can see the dust as the stuff of trees and the stuff of stars and the stuff of God, so that you can discover the beauty that is God, which is and always has been right here. Do you know what the Holy One can do with dust?